Right, we have a panelist with us today, of course, to take us through the topics of the day as we are discussing the topics or the politics of the week that has been. But before we head there, we have this also clip of the week for you.
Let us shake hands and embrace our neighbors.
Ni vizuri wamekubaliana Kenya endelee, lakini kwa wale watu waliadhirika wafike, waite mkutano, wakae nao watu, waongee nao ili roho yao watu itulie. Si hao kibinafsi kule wanasema handshake na hiyo maneno inaishia hapo.
If there is anything I said last year that hurt or wounded you, if I damaged the unity of the country in any way, I ask you to forgive me and to join me and to join me in repairing that harm.
Mimi naona hiyo msamaha haina nini kwangu, sababu kama ni kuomba msamaha wangesema mapema, waseme ni si kupenda kwao, lakini mpaka saa hii hawajawahi sema na nahisi na uchungu moyoni.
Mimi namsamehea rais kwa yale ambayo niliona ya kwamba yalinichocha sana, na pia mimi naomba msamaha kwa wale wa Kenya ambao niliwapitia.
Viongozi wengine wanapinga mambo ya handshake. Yule mtu ambaye anapinga mambo ya handshake ajui uchungu ya kijana wake kupigwa risasi na polisi wakati wa demonstration.
If we don't put an end to unrestrained political competition, it will put an end to Kenya.
Tumeangalia pale ambaye mvua ilianza kupiga wa Kenya ni wapi. Kwa ilianza kupiga wakati baada ya uhuru kupatikana, wakati viongozi walitofautiana. Sisi tunataka kurudi pale ili tuanze kuunganisha wa Kenya ili tusigawanye kwa msingi ya ukabila.
Vile tunaendelea kusoma, Kenya inaendelea kubadilika. Hakuna haja tupigane. Election ni ya siku moja na ni kitu kinakuja kinapita.
As we shake new hearts, Mr. Speaker, let us remember the other old hearts that we shook before.
Mshukuru Mheshimiwa Rais hajatuchukia watu wa Tana River. Lakini namuomba Mheshimiwa Rais swala la handshake pia Tana River alihusishe.
When it comes to the very important matter of a real look at the Constitution, because that bridge building team will have come a cropper, according to me, if they don't come up with proposals on the amendment of Constitution 2010, because that is where they can build inclusivity. In the meantime, should it be that there will be people joining government in terms of what the handshake between Uhuru and Raila did, I think every community in this country must be included.
Wanasheria wetu, they have not yet framed the question. What is the question that will take us to the referendum?
Hiyo si shida. Shida ni kwenda kwa referendum kufanya nini?
Tumetoka hapo, hatutaki kurudi wakati huu. Ama tuwe tunatengeneza katiba ati kwa sababu tunataka watu fulani wapate positions. Hiyo sio nia ya kutengeneza katiba. Kwa hivyo sasa hivi acha tufanye kazi, alafu hiyo katiba kama referendum itakuja, kama tutakuwa na mabadiliko ikue wakati huo.
Kila kitu kina wakati wake. Wakati huu ni wakati wa kufanya kazi. Mambo ya kuleta debate ya referendum, muda wake haujafika. Muda huo ukifika basi sisi tutakuwa tayari, lakini wakati huu ni kufanya kazi.
Sisi kutoka Mlima Kenya na Kiambu yote, sisi maombi yetu Mungu ashasikia. Ndio nasikia mkisema ndume wawili, sisi tunatambua ndume mmoja peke yake, William Samoei Arap Ruto.
Tunataka kwenda kusalimia rais wetu Moi wote kama watu arifiti pale. Patieni si na basi twende tusalimie.
Kuna walaghai ambao wameenda wakadanganya jana naibu rais, wakamweleza kwamba mzee amepatia yeye appointment pale Kabarak na mzee hajui. Sasa they have embarrassed the whole deputy president kwenda kuangaisha pale Kabarak bila kukutana na mzee.
Deputy president, usiogope. Kwa hii safari yako umeambiwa na bishop, Umeambiwa na kila mtu, wewe utakuwa rais ya Kenya.
Chatamwa so do mwa gule Gideon yakitonon kila saa ku Gideon mbani. So agonget kule ane akanyiti kandoichu kila mmoja yao.
Right, we have our panelists here in studio with us. Of course, we introduced earlier Kimani Wamatangi, who's the Senator of Kiambu. Also, we have with us Karanja Kabage, who is an advocate of the High Court. We do have with us as well Dr. Otiende Amollo, who is the Member of Parliament from Rarieda. We have also Jakoyo, who is a former Deputy Whip of the National Assembly. Jakoyo also was a former Member of Parliament of GEM. Good morning, gentlemen. All right, looking at this development, let's just begin with you, Kabage, and what we've just heard and what is going on right now with the referendum debate. And everyone now is toeing and froing on this issue. We wonder where it is taking the country. At the same time, also, we want to look at the politics of the Rift Valley and the Moi factor therein as well. We've heard also from the Senator of Baringo that they're saying, oh, you should not embroil my father's name in this politics. I mean, we should uncouple what is happening in the Rift Valley with the former President Daniel Arap Moi. Your take?
Well, thank you, Debarl. Let me put it this way. After very many years, we passed a new constitution in 2010. And that constitution was passed by close to 70% of the Kenyan people.
Yes.
In fact, 69%, only 31% did not vote for it. The structures that were put in my opinion, have not been fully exploited. And if we embark on a new dispensation or constitution making or referendum to change the constitution, we have not quite had enough time to even interrogate the new constitution. But that doesn't mean Kenyans cannot sit down and say, we agree, we need to change the constitution. The question is, what are you changing it to? That's most important. I would support the idea of looking at the constitution from a national consensus perspective. We look at it, and there are certain areas which I am very concerned about personally. And that is the size of the legislative bodies. The parliament, the national parliament, that is composed of the National Assembly and the Senate. The sizes are enormously expensive for this country. If you go to the issue of the county assemblies, we got so many poor people that it's just like busybodies. And that is not the problem. The problem is the cost to the nation. If you look at our national budget, it is quite clear that we are into consumption. We are not into development. And what is the purpose of politics? The purpose of politics is to move the standard of living of our people to the next level. But if you don't have the financial wherewithal to be able to do that, then at the end of the day, you're marking time. Now that, to me, is something that needs to be looked at very carefully. Now, but as we advocate for any changes that may be there, we need to be quite alive to Chapter 16 of our Constitution. And specifically Article 255, 256, and 257.
Yes.
Many times when I have heard people talk about changing this Constitution, I always wonder how many of our people have deeply interrogated the process of changing the Constitution. It is a very onerous job, unless we have a national consensus. Today, I can tell you without any fear of contradiction, no party, whether it's Jubilee, All, NASA, a coalition, can on itself, by itself, be able to prosecute a constitutional amendment. The handles of doing that are enormous. And therefore, first and foremost, we need to sit down and ask ourselves, do we want to change this constitution? And it should be agreed generally by at least 75% of the people of Kenya. And above all, for what purpose are we changing the constitution?
But how can we talk about a consensus, of course, and we know the way we are polarized right now as far as maybe yes is concerned and then no is concerned. So it seems maybe on the referendum itself, we can never really come to a mutual agreement or consensus for that matter.
That's why I'm saying,
yes,
without that, let's not get engaged in this conversation of saying we can change the constitution. It's just not possible.
So are we really batting our heads on the wall? Are we wasting
absolutely.
time?
I can tell you that. Yeah. And let me tell you, if you go to Okoa, Kenya, proposal for referendum, which was there about 2 years or so ago, that did not even go anywhere. All right? That alone demonstrated that it is very difficult to actually amend the constitution.
We had also the Boresha the Katiba debate as well.
That's why I'm saying, yes, I want Kenyans to interrogate these 3 articles. Article 255, 256, and 257.
Thank you.
If they're able to do that, then they will know whether we can be able to change the constitution or we cannot change it.
All right, fine. Let's speak also the legal mind of Otiende here. First of all, referendum, is it the way to go? Can we have other avenues that we can try and talk about inclusivity without really tinkering with the constitution?
Thank you, Debarl. Let me start by extending my condolences to the families of the gallant Kenyans who lost their lives, I think yesterday, through those, although it's not been certified that it was the terrorist activities, but it is obvious that those who planted the IEDs could only have come from those terrorist cells. It is one of those things that needs us to refocus the conversation on our role and involvement in Somalia and the manner in which we execute it. But that's a subject for another day. Coming back to the issue, I understood you to have asked Karanja Kabage to talk about the politics in Rift Valley, but I hear him to have shifted it to the one of constitutional change, which is where you've now brought me, and perhaps then that's what I'll now respond to. My understanding and my reading of the landscape is this. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Raila Amollo Odinga have in recent times shaken hands, and they have contextualized it and explained it to Kenyans that they have realized that we need a forum where we can honestly examine a few critical issues that will make us move forward as a nation.
Yes.
I think that is a very fundamental act and an important act, because they didn't necessarily need to do that. Uhuru Kenyatta is now on his 2nd term, and he could as well decide that it is irrelevant examining all these issues. Raila Amollo Odinga has won the elections at least 3 times, but has not managed to gain the reins of power. And he could as well have decided that I am not going to get into any situation of any sort of dialogue or handshake with those he believes have denied him. But they have gone beyond that, and they've realized that there's something more fundamental than just the question of an election. There's something more fundamental than just focusing on the next elections and the one after that. That unless we fix that which is fundamental, with every election, Kenya is disintegrating and will at some point just crack. And so I think that is something to be supported. It is true, and I've seen the clips, there are those who feel genuinely aggrieved. Their relatives and loved ones were killed and maimed. Their property was destroyed. And their question is, will the handshake solve that? Obviously, the answer is no. One of the things that the handshake and nothing can ever do, once a life is lost, nothing you do subsequently will bring that life back. But there are things you can do, one, to avoid loss of life in future. There are things you can do, two, to at least offer some mitigation of that loss. I have explained, and people need to understand, that the handshake is not supposed to sweep away the injustices in terms of those who died, in terms of those who are maimed. It's supposed to form a framework of examining what do we do to those families that lost their loved ones. And if the dialogue, the framework of the handshake does not settle it, then the judicial process will settle it. We have a parallel initiation of judicial process for those who died and for those who are injured. Yes. Having said that, I think the handshake also provides a very good platform for re-examining the question of do we need to relook at any provisions of the Constitution or not. Contrary to what Karanja Kabage says, if the two major political formations, Jubilee and NASA, are agreed on the need, as it appears they are largely agreed on the need, then constitutional amendment will never be a problem. We have this new constitution because at the time, President Kibaki and Raila Amollo Odinga both supported the process. If we are in a situation where, before we come to the contents of the change, where Raila Amollo Odinga and Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta support the process, then we have the significant mass where this amendment.
And conversation continues apace here with our panelists. I'm holding court this morning with Dr. Otiende Amollo, who is a member of parliament from Rarieda. Also, we do have with us Karanja Kabage, who is an advocate of the High Court. Also, we have Jakoyo Midiwo with us this morning, who is a former deputy whip of the National Assembly, that is the 11th Assembly. Also, we do have with us Senator Kimani Wamatangi, who is a senator from Kiambu. We are eagerly waiting for Dr. Boni Khalwale, but he seems to maybe have missed his flight yesterday, so we won't have him this morning as well. So before we took a short break, I think I interrupted you, your thought process.
Yes, thank you.
Your track of thought. Yes.
I was in the process of explaining that it is my belief that if in the context of the handshake, those who are in the political formation led by Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and the political formation led by Raila Amollo Odinga are in support of the amendment process, then the amendment, any amendment can pass both in parliament and in a referendum, because that is what happened previously. You will remember that when Mwai Kibaki and Raila Amollo Odinga supported that president, there are those who opposed, including the deputy president. Yes. And therefore, anybody who voices opposition right now really would not hamper that unless any of the major political formations as a bloc oppose that. But what I wanted to explain is this. There are things that might need to be relooked at. And indeed, we are now 8 years. We are on the 8th year since we promulgated the Constitution. The amendment process that Karanja Kabage was talking about, if it's initiated and if it involves a referendum, is most likely will take almost up to 2 years, which would mean that it would be a 10-year cycle. In any country, in any democracy, re-examining your fundamental law after 10 years is quite reasonable. But there are parts that might need re-examination, there are parts that don't require. 3 of the parts that might require re-examination is one of the ones, for example, Karanja Kabage mentioned, the size of parliament. It must be remembered that it was not the desire of Kenyans to increase the number of parliamentarians. We in the committee of experts had determined that we would leave the number of members of the National Assembly at 210, with a view that there would be a review to see if some of the constituencies can be merged. The idea of increasing it by 80 was purely an idea by members of parliament at the time. And they refused to tell us why they insisted. They called it a deal breaker.
Right.
The second one is the question of devolution. You will remember that in the harmonized draft constitution, we had actually proposed 3 levels of government. We had a county government, we had regional government, and we had the national government. The idea of reducing it to 2 was a later decision after consultation. So if Raila Amollo Odinga reintroduces the debate, there's nothing wrong with that, because in fact it reflected the majority view of the Kenyans at the time. And the last one is on the system of government. There are usually 2 major formations of system of government, either presidential or parliamentary. And there are some which are hybrid in between. the majority of Kenyans, by about 51%, had preferred a parliamentary system. That was our finding. But a significant number, at about 48%, had preferred a presidential system. So in our harmonized draft, we actually proposed a parliamentary system. But the members of parliament went to Naivasha and gave us instructions that they had reached consensus for a presidential system. That is what we adopted. If we want to now re-examine whether the presidential system is preferable to the parliamentary system that Kenyans had preferred earlier, there's nothing wrong with that. But the caution, though, is there are things that some people are saying that might require re-examining the constitution which really do not. Issues like corruption, issues like impunity, issues like inclusivity. I would say that those are issues that have been so thoroughly covered in the constitution. The only problem is that we have refused to implement the provisions of the constitution.
Thank you. Let's rope in also Jakoyo Midiwo on this. A deal breaker, you said, because he had mentioned that it was agreed that we should have a county, regional, and a national, form of government, isn't it? Right? And then what was this deal breaker that you're talking about? Yeah, I remember. Was the issue of the numbers, that it was agreed there should be 80.
I think Mheshimiwa Otiende is a bit wrong there. First of all, I think let's talk to the future, not what was. I actually think the country is carrying a very heavy load of too many politicians. That must be agreed. You do not need 500 MPs, Senate and National Assembly combined. We don't. Remember, India with 1+ billion people has 566 MPs. America has, I think, 535 with nearly 500 million people. But I think the big thing is, why are we not living within our means? I saw something yesterday when a British MP said that countries that go to borrow money are actually broke. I think we are very broke. We can't afford the things we are trying to do. So what is the optimum number of MPs and MCAs that we need? I think we are more about 200 and maybe 500 MCAs across the country. You'll be fine because we can afford them. Or at least we can attempt to afford them. I do not think devolution is working. And when I saw first of all, let me say that what Karanja Kabage is saying, I think we need like half the counties which we have, or a bit less. From Bomas, we were just at 14 regions. That made sense. We spent 3 years in Bomas. So why were we there, going there every morning to canvass what is best for our country, and then come out and ignore it? I think something is not right there. But to the 3 levels of devolution, I want to disagree a bit with what I saw Raila say. I thought the DP made more sense. Now if you go to Kakamega, if you go to Butere town, there is no local authority. And that is where the problem is. If the sweepers in Kisumu now work for the county government. The sweepers in Mombasa are supposed to be Joho's people. I think we need another level of government down there so that we can have people working for us managed a bit differently. Because this thing of governance, in fact, basically you have just about 47 thieves. They are not doing the right thing. And many of them, you can't blame them. They don't have an idea. But as far as city management is concerned, street management is concerned, there are people qualified to do that job, and Kenyans are not lacking of manpower. So as to whether it should be as controversial, I want to challenge my friend Karanja Kabage that when we were campaigning for when we were campaigning for the new constitution, we were told 20% was bad. And that 20%, Debarl, is rotten. This country cannot stomach a president lazing around State House. This country needs somebody much like a manager of daily affairs. What I see Magufuli doing in Tanzania. We need it. So how are we going to get it? The closest chance that a Mdigo or a Rendile can be anything, even deputy something, it's when you collapse the pyramid and make it a table. Let Kenyans survive knowing, reduce the number of MCAs, reduce the number of MPs, but expand the top. That will bring a lot of peace. It will bring a lot of peace. But if you say that Wamatangi must wait another 30 years before he has a chance, before he even dreams that he can be a leader, I think something there is missing. Something is missing. Mm-hmm. This presidential one, we have tried. It is not working. You know, whichever way you sugarcoat it, people say working. That the government is for Kikuyus and Kalenjins, and the truth is it is. That is just the simple truth. Why can't we make it possible for a Mwarabu to be a deputy something?
All right, let's hear from Watangi. Is the government for Kikuyus and Kalenjins, as Jakoyo is trying to put it?
You know, first I wanted Jakoyo to tell me why he thinks I'm not a leader.
No, president, not
president. I like that, you know. You know, because he said that if Wamatangi has got to wait for 30 years to be a leader.
Well, you try.
And I believe I'm already one, you know, but at my level. Debarl, I think, you know, this debate that you're having, and if you listen to every aspect of it, be it the argument about, as raised by Otiende Amollo, be it about either the three-tier government level of government, be it about the presidential or parliamentary system, be it about whether we want more inclusivity, every aspect of it is relevant, in my view, very relevant. I mean, those are issues that are still simmering down there that have not been dealt with our new constitutional dispensation and the way we have embraced it, including devolution. And so we cannot deny that there are issues. That's the bottom line. The question that begs is, at what time? Is this the right time that we need to address all these issues? I mean, if we started now and we make it the top topic of discussion, and then it becomes the major focus of our attention, then are we going to achieve as a country in the progress our people would desire? That would be the main question. And you see, if you asked me, in my mind, there is no denying that at the end of the day, whether it is between now and 2021 or 2022, we must sit as a country and discuss a constitutional amendment. We have to. At the end of the day, we can't run away from it. Mm-hmm. And I want to profile this view. Mm-hmm. In my view, I believe that we have to all agree what topic, what issues do we want to have on our table at this time. If we want to talk about constitutional amendment, you know, what issues do we want to bring right now? I had somebody saying that, I think it was Mudavadi, one of the clips that you played, yes, saying the question has not been formatted on what the debate around the constitution will be. And so I want to say, whatever style you know, we use, and I agree to a larger extent with most of the issues that my colleagues have raised here. For example, the number of politicians we have elected and nominated. It's a big burden to the economy. On the question of devolution, yes, we have to relook at it. We were in the devolution conference the other day. If you try to measure really the achievements that each county has made individually, other than you know, the collective fanfare and a lot of talk. But if you look at individually, out of the 47 counties, how many of them can count real success, meaningful steps in progress? Very few. But also it is important to note, as Jakoyo was saying, you know, the very essence of devolution was to decentralize. And maybe this is why we also have to bring our heads together and ask. The talk on either the 3-tier or 2-tier, or what Jakoyo says maybe another lower level of government, such that you don't have sweepers and cleaners being under the, you know, probably employees of the governor. All that put together, probably, how then the question will be, how do we get services right to our people? And I believe this is going to be a big debate that we must have across. There is no one who can claim, or no single view that can be claimed here that this is the only way, that we don't need an amendment to the Constitution, we don't need a referendum, or we need. I think we have to just agree that it is the timing that we have to settle on these issues. Once we've settled on the timing, we know where to go. So, I mean, that will be my view. All right. I mean, you asked me that last question. Is it a government of Kikuyus, or is it, what did you say?
This was Jakoyo, not me. Let's be very categorical.
We moved away from that kind of thinking and talk a long time ago. So I mean, Jakoyo would have to remind me what he's talking about. I mean, we are a nation of Kenyans now.
So no matter how we slice it, it seems then we are headed to a referendum. Yes. Is that a consensus that we agree here as a panelist?
You know, at the end of the day, that's what I said, Debarl. Come 2022, there is no way, whether it is via referendum, whether it is via whatever other process, whether it is via a decision of parliament or a process of parliament, or probably appointments or creation of new positions, there is no way we are not going to look at those primary issues. For example, inclusivity, more decentralization of resources, I mean, thinning and narrowing of the number of people. Those issues must come, and they have to be dealt with their constitution.
Thank you. Let's hear from, so we have no choice. Is it what they call the husband's choice? That yes, we crossed that Rubicon, we're headed for a referendum. From your own estimation, do we really need it in the first place? Also looking at what we have on the front page of, we can tie it in with this particular debate that we have also on, you know, the wage bill. And 700%, that is the increment that the MPs are seeking for their pension. 700%, what will be your reaction on this? In light of what we have right now, a bloated number of MPs that we have in Parliament, still this seems to be exceedingly expensive for this country to sustain.
Yeah, let me just repeat what I said earlier, and that is the purpose of governance.
Yes.
And that means the elected leaders is to change the lives of our people. And how you change the life of our people is by making sure that you have a functioning economy.
Yes.
Now, a functioning economy is a factor of a number of things. One of them is how much money are you able to generate yourself? And out of what you generate, how much is going to consumption?
Yes.
And how much is going to production or other investment? Now, in this country, we have a very serious problem. And the problem is, when you look at our parliament, even for now, they're very busy coming up with the architecture of how they should spend the money. But very few are talking about how do we generate income. We are borrowing, as Jakoyo has said. And if you borrow, you must have the means and the wherewithal to repay that money. Now, our focus as a country is to ensure that we are generating income, that most of it is going towards investment. That is wealth creation, so that you can improve the lives of the people. Because it doesn't matter how many tiers of government you create. It was fascinating to hear my brother Jakoyo here saying that you need a top level, top heavy structure of government, where you have as many inclusive people as possible. First of all, I want to discount one thing. It doesn't matter how you come up with a structure of government. Not every community necessarily can produce a president, right? Are there inhibitions that make it that impossible? Look at the US. They have been in power, they have been independent for the last 240 years, close to 240 years. They have only produced 45 presidents. Donald Trump is the 45th president, all right? There is only one black president that we had there. But the country has been like that. Now, anybody to tell us that for you to really feel you are a Kenyan, you must of necessity be a president, it's a fallacy, in my opinion. It just does not happen. What is most important to me is, do we have laws in this country that make sure that somebody cannot be discriminated by virtue of their ethnic particularization? Do we ensure that we hold everybody to account? In other words, there is no impunity. So that if you commit a crime, it does not matter from what community you come from. You are held to account. The biggest challenge in this country today is corruption. That corruption, it is non-ethnic based. It is a proliferation of evil that is taking place in this country. Now, if we can come up with a mechanism of dealing and addressing the issue of corruption in this country, I don't care who sits in State House.
But how would we be talking a good game about how we can actually slay this dragon of corruption, how we can launch, we've come with so many terms, launch the boil of corruption, slay the dragon, but we never slay the dragon, we never launch that particular boil.
That is now the creativity that is needed to come up with wherewithal. How do we deal with that problem? Because it is not ethnic based.
Creativity from whom?
Now, all of us. When we come to a question of sitting down and
but all of you have failed us as Kenyans.
Please, I'm telling you right now.
We've given you the opportunity. Jakoyo has been in parliament. Wamatangi is here. They're still fighting Ruaraka. But we never seem to see any light at the end of the tunnel as far as fighting corruption in this country.
I can tell you how you can deal with the corruption. One, you can come up with the legislation and say that once you are either alleged to have committed a corrupt act, you resign. That's a law today. Both the Jubilee and NASA can put in place right now.
Mr. Kabage,
just a minute.
Yes.
You resign immediately. Secondly, within 6 months, you must be either found guilty or innocent. Why? If you look at the current constitution, we have said if you are elected and somebody petitions that election, within 6 months, you must be found either you are elected or not elected.
All right.
You get what I mean? So we can, if we have a law like that, because the problem right now is this: when we talk about golden bag, all right, we have golden bag cases of before you were born yourself. 1990, that is when these things happened, and they happened even earlier. All right, 1990 is 20. How many years? 28 years ago. And we have people in court.
And still we can't see the files.
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
right
they're
now,
saying the files.
If we have collectively, all of us want to deal with the problem of corruption, we must put time frame within which we must be judged either guilty or innocent.
We need to wind up this topic on the referendum debate. Before we come to you, Jakoyo, because we're talking about legislation again. We are inundating ourselves with so many legislations. We have the Economic Crime Act that just came the other day. We have so many institutions to fight corruption and have cohesion in this country, but we don't see any discernible difference as far as this is concerned. Why should we go the legislative way again? It's like what happened also, I think, in the Bible with the Mosaic Law, right? And so many people came up with their other bylaws to the Mosaic Law. You remember when maybe it was the Sabbath day, right? Even now, you just spewing your own saliva on the ground, it rolling was considered work. So this is what I think Kenyans are doing. Aside from the Constitution, we're creating so many legislations aside, which is becoming very cumbersome, and you know, it's just becoming so weighty on our shoulders as well. Legislator, let's hear from our legislator himself here as well, because looking at that particular headline that we have on the Standard today, I think if we just pick up that particular headline, look at this again. Just the other day we were talking about the board members, I think 80% increment for their sitting allowance. We barely even 5 months down the line, we're talking about 700% increment because of pension. So it seems this is actually a cash cow for the parliamentarians. Mr. Otiende, were you involved in this?
I think you just muddied the waters.
Yes.
Because you've taken me from the constitutional debate to a very interesting topic on the standard. But let me now therefore say two things and then I come back to that. Let me start by saying accepting responsibility is very important. In this panel, only two gentlemen were in the last parliament. The Honorable Jakoyo Midiwo and the Honorable Kimani Wamatangi. And therefore, there are three things in the current constitution that the former members of parliament must take responsibility for. One is the increment in the number of constituencies by 80. Two is the adoption of a presidential rather than a parliamentary system. And thirdly is the question of the affirmative action that is still pending right now. As you are aware, there's been a court case. And any time the High Court can dissolve parliament and we go back to a general election. And that is because we have not been able to meet the threshold in the constitution that requires at least 1/3 members of a different gender. When we raised that issue with them, they told us categorically that they will cross the bridge when we come to it. We came to that bridge, we've never been able to cross it. Those three things. Now, coming back to this other issue in terms of corruption and all, I think it is important to understand that the problem is not the law, and there's no question of creating further law. We have so much law on corruption. But if we started enumerating it, I don't think there's any other country on earth that has more law on corruption than we do. Right from the constitution, which you don't find in any constitution. Our problem is not the law in terms of written law. Our problem is the people we entrust to implement that law. That's the bottom line. And therefore, for me, to the extent that corruption has been identified as one of those areas that should be covered in the context of the handshake, my understanding is that it is to re-examine that whole edifice. I think we've got it wrong completely every time, the way we've got it wrong with electoral officials. We have also equally got it wrong with the people we entrust to fight corruption. That's the bottom line. It's not about the law. But one thing Jakoyo mentioned, and I think Wamatangi also mentioned it, that when it comes to the question of referendum, I think it is not fair right now, and I agree with them, to start discussing the specifics. Is this what we want? Is this not what we want? Because those specifics can only come if we agree on the fundamental question. Should we re-examine the foundational law, which is the Constitution? If we are agreed, then we come to the next question. What is the structure of its re-examination? And that, I understand, is what the 14-member committee is looking at. When we do that, then we will come to this issue. There are those who say, like Raila, that we should have a regional government. That is a government between the county and the national government. The argument for it is that 47 units are so many, too many to be strong enough to stand up to national government. And so you need units that are fairly powerful because they are large enough in between them. There are those who say that we need lower levels like Jakoyo. And the argument is that you need people who are close enough to those who elected them, and therefore people can believe that their government is close to them. Both arguments are valid. We considered both at the committee of experts, and that's why we ended up with the county government and national government. You don't want a unit that is too large, that those who elect members to it still feel like it is out there in Nairobi. But you also don't want units that are too small to be effective. And so you must strike a balance. That discussion will be reopened in that context. But now let me come to the question of the headlines. And I think in fairness, it's a question that is better answered by Jakoyo Midiwo and Kimani Wamatangi. Why? Because that question has not arisen in the current parliament. I am unaware of the debate. Yes. If you see the report, you will see that the reporter is saying it was discussed in the last parliament before it was dissolved. But in fairness, even to members, I think the question that is indicated there is a question not so much of giving any special monies, and by the way, we are not the ones to benefit. It is very clear. It's not the current members, it's the former members. And I think it talks of those who have served 2 terms. This matter has not arisen. It has not arisen in Parliament. I am unaware whether it has arisen in the Budget Committee. Maybe when it does arise in the context of the presentation, then we'll discuss it. But having said that, what I understand from the story is not so much a question of unfairly benefiting members of parliament. I understand it to be a question of a debate of, do you have members of parliament who, therefore, who need to draw some small amount of money monthly for a very long time, or do you give a one-off payment to members of parliament and then they don't have to draw? And if you put it that way, it's not as unreasonable as it sounds there. The only question is it like a golden handshake sort of thing, or a continuous payment until either you die as others do? And therefore, I don't think it's that fundamentally wrong.
Right. Thank you. Let's say from Jakoyo, just to tell us briefly on this particular development, then we close it up and then we look at the Rift Valley politics.
Let me tell you what my understanding is. In fact, I don't think that article is worth my reading. You know, pensions are contributory. So which part of parliament? I was in the last parliament, and I qualify to be pensionable even as I sit here. What that story is trying to do is to damage parliament so that they don't contribute in the topic we are talking about, this issue of constitution. That is what that story, somebody has created that story to mean.
So this is a diversionary tactic.
Why is it not in the back page? It's just diversionary, and I can tell you.
Because 700% also is...
how do you do 700% increment? I mean, what is it based on? Would I be asked to go back and contribute again? You know, even the pension we get, even though it is contributory, do you know it is taxed twice? When you begin to draw it and when it is deducted from your salary after paying tax. So those are issues which I think Wamatangi and Otiende can sort out for retirees. If you have been, like I've been there for 15 years, any job where you work for 15 years, otherwise utakuwa umejaribu sana. So make it good for us, but that is not a real story. I can tell you for free. Well, now, let me say this, because I saw my friend Karanja is saying even what Musalia is saying, that the question has not been framed. I don't think you need somebody too intelligent to figure out that we need police reforms. We must take our country to a standard where the civil servants, in fact, if we need anything, even if we don't do anything else, we must make civil servants superior to politicians. If you do that, a police officer will have no way of taking instructions from politicians to shoot Kenyans. The work of the police force. And you know, I want to challenge you, Debarl, as a media house. Just go here to Parkland Police Station. You see those small huts? 7 policemen, 5 policemen are living in there with their families. They can't be good people when they live like that. We are not protecting our police force, particularly from politicians.
Thank you.
Just give me one more minute. Then this issue of corruption. Corruption is a symptom of bad governance. And we must make sure whoever it is, whether you are the president or you are the MP, we must make sure that we figure out how to tame politicians, because that is where the problem is.
All right, thank you.
But then you need reforms, the number of MPs. Then you need reforms in IBC. My last word is IBC. We can't have a body that leads us into war every 5 years. The first thing we must do is to take away the so-called independence of IBC. We must, and I'm sending Otiende, because now he's the lawyer next to us, look at what the Swedish have done with the Office of Auditor General. Just get one commissioner and have him sit next to the Speaker in Parliament, so that he is an ex officio member of those committees in Senate and National Assembly, where they make that policy. There must be somebody who is in charge of elections. These ones, from Siaya to Garissa, to where, send all of them home.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right, Wamatangi?
Yes, just a very quick one, because Jakoyo has expanded the discussion. I don't want to go to IBC, otherwise I may have to remind him of all the things he did and said just before the nominations. But let's just on 3 issues. First, I wanted to remind Otiende Amollo, you've heard the name of Wamatangi has been mentioned many times this morning, especially when it comes to money, including pension. Wamatangi should go and explain. One, I want to remind the two gentlemen that I'm a senator, and the senator by law, the Senate is barred by law from introducing or dealing with any money matters or money bills in Parliament. And so what we only do is oversight, and the only money law or bill that we have a word over is the county allocations bill. Anything to do with other monies being allocated to who is the work of the National Assembly. But I wanted to remind Otiende Amollo, as a member of the Committee of Experts, that it's actually not the last parliament that adopted either the presidential or system or rejected the other. When the Committee of Experts tabled its reports, the parliament that was sitting then had the transitional process that they had to carry out, and they picked various sections of that constitution to operationalize before Parliament then adjourned sine die. So it was that Parliament before closure. So when we came in, there was already a system which was presidential and so on. However, let me just have my word on this topic of corruption, Debarl, because now I've been in elected leadership for 5 years plus, and if I was told to write down my thoughts on what corruption is and how it works in Kenya and what can be done, if this was my last day and I was told to say what do you think about corruption in Kenya, I would say to Kenyans, we have a big battle in front of us. Corruption here, corruption in our system is not only endemic, it is absolutely improbable and impossible. It is everywhere. It is in every system. It is at all levels, whether you like it or not. And I've tried to look at this case you heard me talk about, the Rarieda case. And I've sat in the Public Accounts Committee now for 5 years. And you can't believe the kind of things that you see. And continuously. And sometimes I pity, for example, like when the head of state, the president, took it upon himself and said he was going to do battle with this monster of corruption. And he put his best foot forward. This battle, for us to win it, I don't know, but I think it will take a miracle. But that miracle can only be ourselves, our determination. It's been fought elsewhere. I've read autobiographies of several leaders, world leaders, who have led their countries into successful economies and nations. And the one thing that you always realize from their stories is that the battle and fight they have had to put their people together and eradicate corruption from their systems was not a one-man's battle. It was not a head of state's battle. It was not a people's battle, that is a group's battle, but it was an everyone's battle, starting from the mind and convictions of the people. And I think this one, if there is one issue, when we say that we want to have either issues that will be listed down as matters to be discussed during a referendum or a national talk, corruption must be one of the topics that Kenyans will have to sit and discuss.
Thank you.
Question, Debarl,
yes.
Just kindly, Wamatangi can't get off that easy. Wamatangi was in a committee that oversaw 47 thieves, and none of them has been brought to book, and he can't talk about this issue of corruption and not talk about the record of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate. That is their primary job. And many of them are walking scot-free on the streets. And they have stolen, even the things they have stolen are known.
Right.
So he must even begin with Nairobi.
Let me answer Jakoyo very quickly. You know, in the life of the Public Accounts Committee of the Senate, and we are now doing our, our 5th year. We started with the impeachment of one of the governors in Embu, which was then overturned by the court, and so on. And in the next 2 years, we'll be concluding the reports for the governors who sat in the first term. Because remember, when we went into Parliament, there was a court order that barred Senate, a Public Accounts Committee, from looking at the accounts of those people. When we come to the conclusion of the terms of the governors, the first set of governors, there's going to be a lot of thunder in this country.
Thank you.
A lot of it.
Let's leave it at that.